Welcome to Work in Progress, Conversations with Creators. I'm your host, Logan Royce Beitman. On today's program today, I have with me Maxine Thévenot, who's a conductor who's going to be conducting at Carnegie Hall in New York. We talked about what she's conducting and what it's like to be a conductor and the art of conducting, which I think will be really fascinating to a lot of people. I hope that you enjoy.
If you enjoy our podcast, please like and subscribe and consider becoming a digital subscriber to the Albuquerque Journal to help us bring you more content like this. You can find this episode and all of our podcasts on the Albuquerque Journal website, abqjournal.com, as well as YouTube, iTunes, and Spotify. See the show notes for a discount code on a digital subscription. Thank you for supporting the Albuquerque Journal, New Mexico's leading news.
Hi, Maxine. Thank you so much for joining me here today.
Hi, Logan. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, so you're going to be conducting at Carnegie Hall, I believe, for the first time, right?
Yes, conducting for the first time.
Yeah, so that's exciting. I guess, what's the old joke? How do you get to Carnegie Hall?
Practice, practice, practice. I have played in Carnegie Hall before. When I used to live in Manhattan, I had the pleasure of being the organist in a brass and organ ensemble. And so we would be hired to play for, I think it was Cornell University's graduation ceremonies every year. And so it's a familiar space to me.
Yeah. No, that's exciting. Well, let's start, I guess, maybe talking about how you did get to Carnegie Hall, like how and how you got started as a conductor, because I always think this is an interesting thing. Like if you're, when I was a kid, I liked music, so I did band, and, you can get into chorus, but like typically like children are not always learning, they're not being taught to conduct, right? So it's always interesting the path that people take to get into that.
I was thinking about that, reflecting upon how did I become a conductor, because it's not, like you said, it's not something that, as a 4-year-old, you don't dive into conducting typically. I was a typical 4-year-old who had the opportunity to study the piano, and I had a fantastic teacher. She was a Norwegian immigrant, growing up here in Canada. She was a traveling music teacher, which is kind of unusual. She would travel from village to village. And I just remember she had so much music in the back of her car. And she would say, "Oh, hang on, I have a piece of music just for you." And she would go out to the back of her car, and, lo and behold, some Beethoven would appear, or some
Right.
Mozart would appear, that kind of thing. She was an incredible woman. And I think in many ways, my very first inspiration, in music. She started a choir for all of the sort of small village kids to come to once a month. I think we used to get together and sing, and we would go on radio and TV and that kind of fun stuff.
Yeah. How small was the place that you're from?
I grew up in a francophone village called Zenon Park in Saskatchewan, Canada, and then my dad, who was a grain elevator manager, he moved around quite a fair bit. So we moved to a German community, and as we were the only French Canadian family in that community, so that was a bit weird.
Yeah.
But as it happened, we lived next door to the church, and we lived next door to the school, and as a sort of Roman Catholic parochial school church, there were about maybe 300 people that lived in that town. So you knew everybody.
And well, what instrument did you start on, or voice, or how did you come into music really?
I started it with piano,
Yeah.
and then at the age of 11, I guess I had a bit of an epiphany alongside an awakening of kind of being in church and realizing that there was this other instrument that was leading the hymn singing. And I remember turning to my mom and saying, "Hey, Mom, what is that instrument?" And she's like, "Oh, that's the pipe organ. Do you want to go and have a look upstairs?" So I remember going up to the organ loft and being introduced to the organist and his family, who were all apparently organists.
Right.
And I remember him saying, well, since you play the piano, I'm sure you could play some of your pieces on the organ. And I just thought, what? That's crazy. So I sat down at the organ bench and he said, if you have some Bach conventions, that would work really well on here. So he pulled some buttons. I didn't know anything about it, right? I couldn't even reach the pedals. And I started playing my Bach piece and I was just like, whoa, this is so cool.
I mean, the organ, I have so much respect for organists. I feel like I don't know if it's the most difficult instrument, but it's like there's not that many other instruments you play with both your feet and both of your hands. I was thinking about this because I used to play drums, so that's something, but there's just, it's a limited number of sounds you get, but with an organ, it could be over, 1,000 or, with all the stops and everything combined, if you have 3 keyboards and then right? So it's quite a bit.
It is quite a bit. And I think as a kid who had studied the piano, which was just one keyboard and, a variety of one sound, the idea of so many different colors and sounds really captivated this young mind.
Yeah. I mean, people describe the organ as a kind of like a one instrument orchestra. So is that like good preparation for becoming a conductor?
I think so. The journey to a conductor, I think, is obviously different for different people, and it's not something that I set out to necessarily be. My first year at Manhattan School of Music, I was in a class, we were studying music of Igor Stravinsky. And at the end of the class, our professor wanted to put on a concert of the music of Stravinsky. Stravinsky hated the organ, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember the professor just kind of standing from the top of the classroom, the stage, and he said, you there, you will conduct the choir. And I remember thinking, what? They're looking at me? And I think because I was an organist, there's this sort of assumption that, oh, well, you obviously know how to conduct a choir, or you obviously know how to conduct if you're an organist, because in the sacred music world, they go hand in hand.
Right.
And I think that kind of began the journey for me of like standing in front of people who kind of knew what they were doing, of singers who knew what they were doing, as opposed to just a volunteer church choir. And I discovered that I really, really liked it.
Yeah. Yeah. And you kept with it, I guess, all these years.
I did yeah.
Yeah. Well, how did you end up in New Mexico?
I graduated from Manhattan School of Music and got a job at the Cathedral of St. John. And also simultaneously got a job right after I finished my DMA paperwork, submitting that thesis. They said, yeah, we'd love to have you on the faculty, but you need to finish your thesis first and get that piece of paper. So once I got the piece of paper, I started working at UNM, and that's how I landed up in New Mexico.
Yeah. How long have you been here now?
Since 2005. So, New Mexico is definitely home. It's the longest I've lived anywhere.
I mean, what's it? I don't know. Yeah, what's it been like? I guess working with the singers and musicians that you've worked with here.
I feel like New Mexico has an extraordinary wealth of natural talent, and when I first moved to New Mexico, the one thing that we didn't really have at that time in Albuquerque, Santa Fe was a professional level choral ensemble that was comprised of solely New Mexicans. And so I set about putting together a group of people, like-minded individuals who really wanted to do music at a high level. We put on our first concert, and the cathedral was packed out. We had like standing room only. It was weird. It was wild. It was like, what? This is cool. And somebody said, you should like incorporate this and start this group. So it became Polyphony, Voices of New Mexico. And I'm proud to say that it's still going.
It seems like there's a good, strong audience here for this kind of music. Do you think?
I think so. I find that the audiences here are like myself, often transplanted from elsewhere. Maybe we have a lot of retirees from the East Coast, that kind of thing. And so I think that they have uh, a love of not only new music, but also music that might be familiar to them. And so they want
Yeah.
to support that.
Yeah. So, I feel like conductors don't get interviewed that much compared to singers and other musicians. And, I mean, we were talking about this a little bit. Like, I think that, I mean, most people, you ask them to name conductors, they might think of one or two, whereas unless you're really, into that world, but I think just ordinary people that occasionally go to a concert or something. And, we see you up there kind of flapping your arms around and stuff. But, I always wonder, can you tell just by looking at a conductor if they're a good conductor? Like, are there things that we should be looking for as audience members, um, to understand really what you're doing and the artistry of conducting?
The art of conducting. I think that's one of the greatest mysteries out there, honestly. For me, a lot of what I do on stage in a performance is something that has already been talked about and discussed. And for me, the rehearsal process is the most important part.
Mm,
It's the performance is obviously wonderful and all of that, and because it's this coalescence or hopefully of everything that you've been working on. But for me, the magic really happens in rehearsals.
mm,
And whether you, how can you tell whether a conductor is good or not? I don't know. That's a really great question. Because everybody has different ideas of what kind of gestures to make and how to communicate from just gesticulating. And again, I think those gestures are better discussed in a rehearsal environment, to be better understood. I think a conductor, in essence, has to be a really good communicator, not only verbally in rehearsals, but just be very clear with gesture. Um, yeah, it's tricky because it's an anticipatory sport, isn't it?
yeah,
A conductor has to already be hearing what's coming up next and already has to be predicting what needs to happen next. And is always adapting to the moment in time, is always adapting to the music in the moment
yeah.
to
I
a
think
degree.
that what you said about the rehearsal being the most important thing, I think that makes sense, and especially if we think about you in relation to a director of a play or a coach with a football team. Or, it's like you can't just come in, show up on the day of the performance and do the thing. It's like you have to have been rehearsing with the musicians so that you're understanding each other's languages and right where, before that moment, right?
Yeah, I mean, the task ahead of me in a few very short weeks, is to put together the choir and make them an ensemble. Luckily for me, the orchestra that I have in front of me is an orchestra that plays together a lot. The New England Chamber Ensemble, although I don't know them, I suspect that they'll be very good and that they'll be able to adapt to my requests and needs really easily. The choir is comprised of 213 individuals from across the country. It's definitely the largest choir I've ever conducted.
It's pretty
So
large, yeah.
it's really large, and there's a good core coming from New Mexico, which is fantastic. There are about 55 singers from New Mexico, and
And
we've had
some of those you've worked with before.
some of these I've worked with before, and last week we had 3 intensive rehearsals so that we could get to know each other a little bit better, so I could have this core to kind of count on, if you will, and
Yeah.
before we get together with all the other choristers from around America. So I think, in 2 rehearsals, I have to put 213 people's minds and hearts together. And then in 1 rehearsal, I have to put them together with the orchestra.
Right. Yeah,
So
that's not a lot of time.
it's not a lot of time for a 40-minute piece. No.
Do you normally have more time?
For sure. I would say, probably at least 1 orchestra only rehearsal, which I do have.
Yeah.
And then at least 2 choir and orchestra rehearsals would be amazing.
Yeah.
But just to have 1 and then dress and then performance is definitely a faster pace than I'm accompanying, used to working with.
Yeah. I mean, if they're all top tier musicians, I'm sure they know their parts, they can come in, but it's about maybe talk about what you do want to get from those rehearsals. It's sort of balancing them, or it's about bringing out emotion, or
Yeah. I was looking at the numbers and I have something like 75 sopranos, 76 altos, 29 tenors, and about 35 basses. And so you might think, ooh, that's so unbalanced. It sounds like that numbers wise, but you have to remember that tenors and basses can make an infinitely more, they can make a lot more noise than, say, a soprano or an alto can. Just because
wait, sorry, can I interrupt? I'm sorry, but because I always hear that high notes travel further and sound louder than low notes. Is that not true?
Yes and no. I mean, tenors and basses have a lot more overtones in their voices, and so because of that, they have a much broader spectrum. Of course, if you're a high soprano and you're in a room that favors high sopranos, then you're going to sound amazing, right? And you're going to sound maybe loud, if you will. But still, tenors and basses have quite a lot of power. So
it depends partly on the acoustics of the room.
Yeah, definitely depends on the acoustics of the room. Yeah.
Anyway, I interrupted you. Sorry, but continue. That you were saying that it may sound unbalanced, but it's not really because of just what you're saying.
Hopefully it'll all balance out. And so that'll be one of the first things, is just to ensure that we've got a good balance within the ensemble of 213 singers. The next thing is just to make sure that, we're all on the same page with text pronunciation. The whole text of this piece is all in Latin, and there's a variety of different pronunciations of Latin out there. So that'll be something to think about. And then just, there's a variation in tempo and in interpretation of tempi within each movement. There are 9 movements. And so just getting everybody on the same page with regards to what I'm after for tempi will be a big challenge for sure.
Hmm. And then, well, I'm wondering, you have your baton with you?
I do. I brought 2 batons with me. They are both handcrafted batons, here in New Mexico by a gentleman named Hubby Corbin, who's a fellow colleague and wonderful musician. And I chose these 2, number 1, because of the length. I like a shorter stick and I like a heavier stick, so something that really kind of connects with me, and I feel like I've got some heft to the gesture. And I chose this red one because I thought it might go nicely with Carnegie Hall.
Yeah.
It's the interior of Carnegie Hall is this wonderful beige and glorious red. So, it's also my favorite baton. So.
Mm-hmm. And what's the other one?
The other one is this beautiful purple color, and I could not tell you the type of wood, but it's a wood from somewhere in Africa, and it has these cool grooves on it. So, as I said to hubby, it makes me feel groovy. But it also just kind of feels really good in the fingers because it lines up really nicely.
Yeah. It seems like, I guess conductors have different preferences on types of batons, and they're very special, hand carved. It almost makes me think of, like you're like Harry Potter selecting a magic wand or something.
Yes. People who know me really well and a lot of my choristers joke because I don't often conduct with a baton. I find it uh, I find it kind of can get in the way sometimes of what I want to communicate and what I can better communicate with my fingertips. So it's a question whether or not I'll actually use these, whether I have to use them. Um, I actually prefer conducting with a pencil or even with
Huh.
my sometimes with my Apple Pencil even I've conducted with. So
Why? Why is that?
I like the weight, and again, it's just something. It's not too long, so it
Yeah.
feels like it's an extension of myself, but it's like a close extension.
Right. Right. Well, would you mind demonstrating a little bit of some of the gestures that you would do and what they might mean?
With a baton or
Yeah, or however you want to do it, with or without or both. Just to give, imagine, people watching this, they're curious, they want to see, next time they go to a concert, and maybe it's different with different conductors. Maybe it's not like a standardized language, or is it? How much is it?
I think, well, the beats are definitely going to be standardized. I think I'd just do it with my hands because I'm not far enough away from the camera here. But just a regular pattern. Like if you're doing a 4-beat pattern versus a 3-beat pattern versus a
Right.
2-beat pattern, those are pretty. Those kinds of gestures are all going to be pretty standard.
And when you're lifting your hand up the highest, that's like the first beat?
That's gonna be the top end of the beat. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then here is gonna be, say, 1, 2.
Oh, here is
3.
see, I thought that would be 1. I thought it's 1, 2, but it's actually 1.
That'll be the top end of 4, 1, 2.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
See, I didn't even know that.
Well, that's right.
We're starting with the real basics.
And then this hand usually is like the hand that encourages expression or sometimes can show whether you want something smooth and connected, legato. But, for choir stuff, I really like to use a lot of my face. And in the rehearsal process, I try to use a lot of things that I'll be demonstrating with my face. So like if I need them to listen to each other better, I might do something like that within the context of a performance or watch. Just really simple things. Or if I'm looking to shape a particular vowel in a particular way, I might just remind them how to do that.
Right.
Or yeah. Like I said before, it's an anticipatory thing. And so you're constantly thinking, what does the choir or what does the orchestra need from me in order to do their best?
Yeah. So if I'm one of your musicians and you do that gesture where you're pointing at your eyes, like watch me, is that, are you like chastising me? Have I done something wrong or?
Possibly. Possibly, or it could just be, hey, that could have been better, or that was better in rehearsal. So from now on, really watch.
Yeah, yeah.
Or like, you're not quite with you're not quite with the rest of us. So
Yeah.
pay attention.
Yeah. No, this is really fascinating. Now, is this, I mean, did you like take formal classes in conducting?
I did take some choral conducting at Manhattan School. That was just
Yeah.
part and parcel of my coursework there as an organist, because as an organist, we're not all gifted with a concert hall job. Most of us have to work in the church, and I happen to really love working in the sacred music field. And I feel very fortunate to have landed where I have in New Mexico at the Cathedral of St. John.
Yeah.
I have the pleasure of playing a fantastic. It's New Mexico's largest pipe organ,
Mm.
and I have a really great choir there. So I feel really lucky.
Yeah, yeah. And I want to talk about that, but first, just because you mentioned you took some, you had some formal training in conducting, but I'm wondering, is that where you feel like you got most of, um, your knowledge and wisdom as a conductor, or that came differently?
Ooh. No, I think for me, wisdom is just one of those do it, and then kind of figure it out along the way. And the more I do, the more I learn, and the more I also learn that I don't know very much.
Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, I think that who was it? Was it Plato or someone that said, the person that knows the most is the one that realizes they don't know anything, or something like
Mhm.
that. And I mean, in this conversation, obviously, I literally don't know much about conducting, and I'm excited that I'm learning something. But I think, maybe, I've talked to people in other fields. They say no matter, how much I do what I do, like you just go deeper into the sort of mystery of it. I guess it's like you have to keep that mind of like you're always learning, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. And it's truly a constant quest, because every single piece of music you are trying to you're the conduit between what the composer maybe had in mind, or what you think the composer had in mind, and how you need to interpret the performance given the
Yeah.
musicians you have in front of you, and given whatever resources you have in front of you.
How much variation would you say there might be between one conductor and another if you listen to the same piece of music? Um, like, because that's something I wonder. Obviously, with like a film director, you could have two film directors both do Romeo and Juliet or something. They're wildly different, but maybe because they're taking more liberties with it. But I feel like if you're doing a classical piece of music, it's like it's written the way it is. There may be maybe some variation, but I don't know. I mean, how much do you think that um, like you could tell if you went to two performances of the same piece of music that are conducted by different people, what kind of differences might you notice?
Mm, probably tempo and dynamics would probably be the main things. In my preparation of this score, obviously listening to other people's recordings is part and parcel of that preparation. And oh, it's kind of frustrating, because you're like, why is it so slow here? And why are you taking so many liberties that could, the composer didn't write in a rallentando. He didn't ask to have this super slow, or,
Right.
and, Duruflé, Maurice Duruflé, his epic piece, he didn't write very much because he was so super picky about what he did have published.
And
His
I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm sorry to interrupt, but this is the piece that you're performing at Carnegie
Yeah.
Hall.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the Requiem by Maurice Duruflé, like he was so meticulous in writing his dynamics, his tempi. He even took the time to pull out his metronome and go, I want it specifically at this speed. I want it
Right.
specifically at this tempo. And it's just amazing to me, the liberties that some of the recordings I've heard have taken. And I'm not going to say that I'm going to be absolutely letter to the score, because that's difficult to do, especially in my circumstance where I don't actually know the 200 and some musicians in front of me terribly well. So I'll do my best to stay as close to what I think the composer wanted.
Yeah. Is that generally your perspective? Like you wanna do justice to the composer and be as faithful as possible?
Absolutely. In my work at the cathedral, we do a lot of new music from living composers, and so we have that ability to just text them or call them up and say, "Hey, what did you mean
Right.
here? What is this what you really meant, or is this like a wrong note?" Or, and when you're working with an artifact, a piece from the past, obviously you don't have that luxury. And so research is really important, just kind of educating yourself so that you can then pass on that education to your choristers.
Yeah. Now you've used the term sacred music a couple times, and I'm wondering, I guess, if you can define that and what is how much does like the sacredness of the music matter? Like what does that mean to you?
Hmm. Sacred versus secular. So music that would be found predominantly in the church and have to do with the church. Secular being anything that probably doesn't refer to God or Jesus or anything that Yahweh, whatever the word is that you associate with as a deity. Sorry, what was your question about?
Well, I guess what because that's like a kind of standard definition that it's like if it's for the church, then it's sacred. If it's not, then it's secular. But I guess I'm wondering, is there also like something more, like a kind of a certain devotional feeling or mystical experience or a religious experience that is different or that is somehow important to convey through the music?
In this specific piece?
You can talk about this specific piece.
Um,
or in general, whatever. I don't know if my question
no, it's
makes sense.
it's a really great question. I think for me as an interpreter of music, my job is to just try to elevate the music so that it elevates the listener to a place where they feel transported, where they feel like they are just that close to the thin veil between them and their God, or them and that thing that thing that is considered sacred. I think that's something that I strive for all the time, is to try to transport people and move, you know?
I mean, I've definitely had that experience, and I'm not a religious or, I wouldn't even call myself spiritual necessarily, but I've had what, I mean, you might call a spiritual experience and listening to someone play Bach on the organ or something. I mean, sometimes there is something that I do feel transported, whatever that means.
Mhm.
And yeah, I don't know. I mean, like that's something. I don't know. Does it happen just by being faithful to what's on the page? Like it's all there. The composer put it in, and then or there's some kind of feeling that has to go into the performance of it.
Definitely the latter. And I think it's the sum of all the parts. It's the people who are contributing of themselves. It's the interpretation of the piece of music. If it's a great piece of music, that makes it all the much more easy to get people engaged and involved. And I think in this particular piece, the Requiem is a piece that I've lived with for a long time, 35 years, when I first encountered this piece. And so for me, it's a deeply personal piece. And I have a really cool story that I want to put over here for now, just make sure we go back to it. I think singing a Requiem setting, Mass for the Dead, is a very, it's a challenge to do because it's so easy to get lost kind of in the emotion of it. And I think that's the one thing that I will have to work hard at conveying to the choir, who will be who are there for various reasons. Let's not kid ourselves. There are people who are there just because I want to tick off singing at Carnegie Hall on their bucket list, right?
Sure, yeah.
I mean, why else would you travel across the country potentially, so that's part of it. But I want people to get more out of it than just that. I want them to feel like they have had, in the realm of a concert hall, a famous concert hall, an experience or a vibe or something along the journey of those 40 minutes of music that they felt deeply connected to one another in community, that they felt deeply connected to something that they were creating in the moment.
Yeah. So can I ask about the personal connection in that story?
Yeah. So 30 years ago, Oh my God. I was backpacking in France, and I was in Paris, and the summer before, I had just played in the Royal National, the Royal College of Canadian Organists National Convention, and the piece that I had played was the organ part of the Duruflé Requiem. And so I was in Paris. I knew I had to go to Duruflé's church, where he was organist and music director, along with his wife, Marie-Madeleine Chevalier Duruflé. And so I went to Saint-Étienne-du-Mont, to the church. I got there just before noonday mass. It's the 90s, so like I'm wearing like ripped jeans, and I've got this massive backpack, and
Right.
you know, I sit down with my pack, and I'm just like, looking around. I end up sitting next to this elderly lady, and she's looking at me in that way. She's
Right.
very well dressed, like an older Parisian woman would be. We start
Right.
chatting, and I said to her, I'm just so excited to be in this church because I love this composer who used to be the music director here. And I'm telling her all this. And in my hindbrain, there's something that goes, OMG, I am talking to Maurice Duruflé's widow.
Wow.
And it's just dawning on me as I'm speaking to her in my broken French, and she's like, she's talking to me, but she's not really registering the fact that I'm just like in complete adoration and just revere her husband's music and all this, and obviously revere her too, because she's a very accomplished organist. And I'm having this conversation back here and this conversation out here, and it's just like I was having a really like, oh my God moment.
Yeah, I mean, like, what are the chances
What
that
are the
you
chances?
wander into this chapel the same, and sit down next to Duruflé's widow? I mean, that seems like almost impossible.
Yeah, exactly. And I have pictures. I took out my little camera and I snapped some pictures of her after the mass. She was talking to one of the priests or something, and I could tell she was like, "Don't take my picture." But I was like, "I am taking your picture, honey, because no one will believe me when I say that I met Madame Duruflé." Like,
Yeah. What an amazing experience.
yeah, it was.
Yeah.
I still think of that, like, now that I'm doing this project and I'm conducting this piece, and I'm doing that with so many other people and in that space, like, I just think, what? Like, this is such a weird connection to the past.
Right. No,
And growing up,
that's a No, go ahead, yeah.
I think growing up as a French Roman Catholic too, like, this is deeply meaningful for me, to be doing this kind of music, at this point, I guess, in my musical career.
Yeah. What is it about Duruflé in particular that
Mm.
attracts you, that you find, meaningful and moving?
Uh, it's the harmonic language is really just beautiful. His music is all based on Gregorian chant, and I love Gregorian chant.
Mm.
Um, he hi- his music is just literally perfect. Like, there's just it's kind of like Bach. Bach in his time, we all think of Bach as just this perfection, right? Do you ever hear like a note out of order in the music of Bach?
Right,
No,
no.
it's just
Mm-mm.
perfect, right? And the music of Duruflé is kind of similar. He was influenced by people like Debussy and Ravel and all the Impressionists. If you're familiar with the music of Paul Dukas,
Mhm.
he's the guy who wrote the movie music to Fantasia.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's very colorful music, and his use of orchestral instruments is just, I don't know, it's just magic. It's just sheer perfection.
Yeah.
And of all the Requiem settings out there, he's often compared to like Fauré or the music of Verdi. You know, there's all these wonderful Requiem settings that go all the way back through music history, and his is just right up there.
What makes his Requiem different than other Requiems?
Just really the language. I think, there are a lot of similarities with his outlay of which texts he decided to include and which ones he didn't. For example, like Fauré, he included a solo movement for the Pieyesu movement. Like Fauré, he did not include a big long dies irae, unlike Verdi, who takes the dies irae to a whole other level and includes things like hammers and anvils and all kinds of things in his orchestration. But
Yeah. Are there any unusual instruments? And I mean, there's a lot of people in your orchestra. Or just like a lot of it's like lots of violins, lots of, or are there like weird percussion instruments or something like?
There are some pretty cool percussion instruments. I wouldn't say weird, but
sorry.
No, it's all good. I mean, it's all like a personal preference, but like there's the use of the tam-tam or better known as the gong. There's a huge gong in this movement. There's the juxtaposition of the harp along with the use of the organ. The organ is a fairly substantial player in this particular Requiem, which is unlike a lot of other Requiems in that sense.
Yeah.
So Duruflé's paying homage to his own instrument.
Yeah. Well, how are you feeling in these days leading up to this performance this month?
Well, I have moments where I go, I can do this.
Yeah.
And then I have other moments where I go, holy shit, what am I doing?
So I guess it changes day to day.
Moment by moment.
I'm sure once you get in and you're working with the musicians, then you'll feel comfortable, I'm sure.
Yeah, I hope so, because it's going to happen whether I like it
One
or
way
not.
or another.
Whether I'm having moments of being in that terror world or whether or not it's going to happen. So
Yeah. Well, actually, and you said that you're an introvert, right?
yeah, a lot of people probably wouldn't believe that, but I think when it comes down to it, I really recharge my batteries in complete solitude, and I'm not afraid of my own company. So people say, well, how can you go and spend like 3 weeks in a cottage all by yourself, in the middle of nowhere? It's like, easy, actually.
Right.
You'd be surprised. But when I get in front of the musicians, and I get in front of a choir, my choir, somebody else's choir, I become, I guess, like an extroverted introvert, and my brain starts really firing and finding all kinds of fun analogies to kind of get people thinking musically and to get people excited about what they're doing and what they're singing about.
Yeah. And I guess when you're actually performing, does it help that your back is to the audience?
Probably. As an organist, we often have our backs to the audience too.
That's true. Yeah.
Or we're up in some choir loft behind everybody. And I have no problem with that at all.
Yeah.
It's
Because you're like, yeah, no, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was just gonna say it's like when I'm playing concerts. Like I recently played at Duke University last fall, and they said, "Oh, I hope it's gonna be okay with you. We are gonna be projecting your face and your feet and your body on different screens, on these large screens." I thought, oh my God. Please don't. Just use your ears. It's okay.
But did they do it?
Yeah, that's just part and parcel of the gig.
Yeah.
And for people like my mom, then, she's happy because she gets to see what's going on. And I guess to a certain degree, I think it's a wonderful educational tool because people can
Yeah.
see what it takes to create all those sounds that you hear. And I think it enhances the listener's appreciation of the music. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's very exciting. And I hope anyone, if you're listening to this and you're in New York, please go out and see this concert. And for the rest of us, we can look forward to seeing you when you're back in New Mexico. But thank you again. This is really a pleasure speaking with you today.
thank you, Logan. Thanks for the opportunity.